Hello everyone. Sejr, thank you so much for joining me. I am on Trinity Stamps YouTube channel, and I am feeling like a winter card today, and that's what I have in store. I'm going to be using this Sn-Gnome-man stamp set, which has some really fun winter images. So we're not going Christmas yet. We're just doing some preparations for winter cards. So we have some trees, gnomes, and different snowman designs. And then we have an igloo as well. And I'm going to be bringing in some sequins or some embellishments. These are the stars. They come in a few different colors. And that's going to be creating kind of a night sky with these being the colors to add to the background, almost like twinkling little stars in the night sky. So we're going to be creating a tiny little shaker card using this winter snowman stamp set. Fairly simple, not much needed. So let's get creating. So we'll start off with our cardstock. We have some nice blue greens here. I decided to use two shades. This is going to be a 4 1/4 square card. And so we have the dark in 4 1/4. And then for the lighter color, we have it measured as, I just roughly did it. It looks like it's 6 inches, but it's going to be 4 1/4 by a little extra. And the reason for this is because it's just easier for me to line everything up while I'm doing this. So I'm taking the score board and I scored it at 4 1/4. That's going to create our square. I'm creasing it, varnishing it so that we have a nice good seal. And then what I'm going to do is glue it on top of the first piece of our darker square. This should be all the perfect size. I tried to make sure that everything was perfectly measured. Do take in consideration that if you're using a thicker cardstock, this is only 80 pound. If you're using, for example, 100 or anything that's a little bit thicker, that you may need to trim around when you start in doing the insert. And I'll explain that a little later. So I'm just using my scoreboard buddy here to help me make sure everything is flush in the corners there. And then I'm going to do the same thing for the other side. You do want it to be a little bit offset a bit because this is going to wrap around the next piece. And just to prepare myself, I'm going to trim this centerpiece down just a smidge, maybe a 1/16 of an inch, or maybe a little bit extra, it seems. Because, like I said, those panels are going to fold over top, and you don't want any resistance. These are all measured 4 1/4, so you need to make sure that it can go over. If you're using thicker cardstock, you definitely need to make sure you do even more. A little bit of trimming or moving those window panels out a slight bit, just so it can go over. So let's glue this down, and we've now created our paneled shaker card with the 2 windows. And the reason we created those windows using a square die is because the shaker part that's going in the center will be sticking out. So we can't use acetate, we can't use any of those things. We just make sure it's open. So to make it look a little nicer, I'm going to use the square die to create some frames that are going to go around the outside of each one of these windows on the inside and the outside. I chose white because it's going to be a winter scene and I wanted to tie in some more of the white. White looks fantastic for borders around frames. At least that's my opinion, but use whatever color that works for you. You could have used any darker shade of this bluish green color, but I think the white would probably be the best. And there we go. So there, I fast forwarded it and I got them all done for you. It really does make it look much nicer with just having that frame around all the windows. So now we're going to be creating our shaker card, and to stick with the square theme, we'll create our square shaker. This piece is 3 layers of the same light bluish green color cardstock. I just want to do 3 layers so it's nice and thick. If you're using 100 pound cardstock, you may not need as much. One might be fine. And then I cut my acetate to fit the square, and we'll glue that right down. Now, to create the height, we'll just bring in some foam tape. You need to make sure that the foam tape is secure and that there are no gaps anywhere. So we'll just follow along the square, making sure that we hug and against the previous piece that was cut. And this way, when you throw in your sequence and you start shaking it, they won't be able to sneak out. And this covered most of it, just with one strip. So luckily I do have a little bit of extra here. Don't throw away those tiny little pieces. As you can see, they sometimes come in handy. That little teeny gap is not going to be a problem with the sequence I'm going to be using. Now I've cut out an even darker piece of bluish green cardstock and bringing in some white acrylic paint. I'm going to wet a paintbrush. I'm going to create just a very rough, fast, snowy background. This is only going to be behind the shaker, so you're not going to really see it. And there we go. So I just let that dry quickly. And then we're just going to paste this down. Now, I must have been a little tired because the whole point of this, having the windows and everything, is that I could close it and then I know exactly where to place my background and my my shaker bits. But for some reason, I decided to eyeball it and try to get it perfectly centered. Don't do that. Close the windows. Unfortunately, I don't realize it until a little later. So I do have to do a little snipping and surgery on the card. I cut it all out. You don't need to see that, but just so you know, I did do that. But I'll soon realize my mistake. But let's just keep going, pretending everything is happy and good. I'm going to add a little bit of liquid glue because I do like the wiggle room, which is actually a good thing I did that. So we have our sequence, our snowy background. The sequence are these beautiful stars. And then we're going to make sure that this is perfectly centered in the middle of our card. And there we go. So I close my windows. Then you put everything in so that you can make sure it is all perfectly centered. Like I said, I did have to do a little bit of surgery of snipping some of the paper, but it wasn't too bad. You just have to act a little quickly. And you know what? Even if it didn't, it is totally fine. There's always ways around it, or you just accept that sometimes handmade cards are meant to be not perfect, and that is perfectly okay. I stamped a couple of these images. I have the tree, which is absolutely beautiful. And I'm going to be playing with some of the blue-greens of my Olo markers. And then I stamped out some clouds and that snowman. I think this one's a really cute little snowman. I decided to use this one. And we're going to create a tiny little scene around the embellishment in the center of the card. So we're going to bring in some very, not too many colors. So the brown, that's a neutral, so that you can get away with brown, not being too distracting. And then I will introduce some red as well. Those are the two colors that I'm going to be bringing with my markers. For my coloring, I'm kind of, looks like a kind of not fully coloring. I'm kind of like semi-coloring and then I keep going over. It's something I'm trying with the lightest color, especially where I'm not going to fill in the whole image. I'm just going to kind of get close to the edge and stop. I'm finding that it's helping me create that nice blend. You especially see it with the clouds, because when you do the second layer with the light alcohol marker, it actually blends nicely. I do find that this red that I chose is a little too stark. It's a little too bold. So I'm going to, once I get to this point, I'm going to bring in a brown, actually, the OR48, and I'm going to use that to start bringing in darkness, and that really tones it down a bit, and I think that looks a lot better with the darker red. It's almost matching the tree trunk brown. For some reason, I've been having troubles with my Olo, so I brought in my Copics, and my Copics bled as well. That's why there's ink all over my fingers. I think the heat and the humidity in this room is too much. That's my guess. I've never had my Copics bleed, so it's okay. What I'm going to do is when I cut this all out, I'm going to layer my images so that they cover those parts. Like I said, don't ever give up. Just keep moving forward. There's always ways around. Okay, now that we have all of our pieces, and off camera, I did heat set the sentiment, this winter greetings, that is in the stamp set. I just put it on some cardstock. Once again, another darker cardstock. This one is not the same as the center. I used some different heavier weight so that it could heat set a little bit better. And then I glued that underneath the shaker. I'm going to take these elements that I had just colored and we're going to hug around the whole shaker piece. The reason for that is because at least for me, I want the stars to be kind of hidden when you're not shaking it. That way, when you shake it, they all of a sudden just spring up into the sky and you get to see all those different colors. The oranges and the yellows, the greens, and I think there's a purple in there too. I guess we'll have to wait until we shake it. But I'm just moving around the elements. You don't need to show the whole shaker when you're creating one. It's actually kind of fun, at least for me, to kind of hide it and cover it like this. This is creating such a beautiful, chilly scene. I love it. And there we go. There's that. I knew there was a purple one in there. So this is actually very simple. Just remember that you want to close the window before you center the card or the shaker piece, but it turned out fantastic. And I just love how easy and fun this is. I do hope that you enjoyed this. And until the next time, have a fantastic week and I'll talk to you all later. Take care. Bye.